Okay, so you guys can skip through this video. I have it labeled for each chunk of questions, so you can kind of skip through until you see that slide for the question you need help with. Watch that chunk. Go back to your test. Try and fix your mistakes if you can based off of what I'm talking about here, and then you can come back to the video. So again, I recommend really go back and forth between this video and your test so that you're not watching the whole thing and then going back to your test. It's not going to stick, yeah? So 1 through 3, these questions were all Pythagorean theorem. Now, what your mistakes may have been is that there's 2 possible setups. You have to draw the picture and label your triangle. That may have been mistake number 1. You have to do that because you have to see which side is C, right? This is Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Equals C squared. But we have to know what C is. We might be trying to find C, or might be given C. Remember that C is the side across from the hypotenuse. So in these 2 questions, in this one, I'm trying to find C. In this one, I'm given C. So the setup will look different. So that means that these 2 sides are A and B. It doesn't matter which I choose to be A and B, as long as it's these 2 sides, it's C that's important. So if this was how your picture was labeled, this would have been your setup. 5 squared, that's A, plus 4 squared, that's B, equals what I'm trying to find squared. So we would get this C by itself. We'd have to take the square root at the end. That one would be a little bit different. Now this one again, like I said, I'm trying to find A. So A stays put, or B, you could call it B. Plus, we know that 4 is B, equals, now we know C, so this would be the setup in this case. So this is where your mistake may have happened. Depending on the question and how it's labeled, this may have been your setup, or this may have been your setup. So go back and look at your work from Friday. See if you can tell where you made your mistake. You may have put what you were trying to find in the wrong spot, so be careful there. Okay, so 4 through 5, this was converse of Pythagorean theorem. So these are the ones you had to set up this way, and you had to compare both sides of the table to see if it was acute, which remember is left is less than right, obtuse was greater than, or right was equal. So as an example here, if these were your 3 sides, A squared plus B squared. Remember that C, what goes here, has to be the biggest side. It doesn't matter the order given to us. 20 is the biggest side. That's why it goes here. Now again, this is just C. I need C squared here. And then this would be 9 squared and 17 squared. This would be my A and my B. So it does not matter the order. Again, if they had given the sides 9, 17, and 20, 20 is still going to be C because it's the biggest side. So you have to compare them then. This is 400. I know this is 81. And then 17 squared, I don't know off the top of my head. That's 289. So we're going to simplify this one more time. We still have 400 over here, but I need to add these. 81 plus 289 is 370. So what you need to determine then is what's the relationship. Is this bigger, less than, or equal to what's over here? It's bigger, right? 400 is bigger than 370. That means obtuse. Think again. Greater, obtuse. Smaller, acute. Equal is correct. Equal is right, yeah? So that's what you had to do for those 2 questions. You couldn't just guess. You may have gotten lucky and chosen the correct one, but in order to get it correct guaranteed, you have to do this setup. Okay, so number 6 through 9, a lot of you guys were confused with this, and they were actually very simple, so hopefully when you retest, you can get them correct. So based on the trig function and the angle letter. So this is cosine. The letter here is A. This is tangent. The letter here is B. You had to pick the correct ratio. So it was just a fraction was your answer for these questions, 6 through 9, yeah? So what you needed to do was, based on the angle given, you want to label your sides in respect to that letter. So this would be opposite. This would be hypotenuse. And therefore, this is the adjacent. Then, because you want cosine, we look at SOHCAHTOA. I want cosine. I want the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Because the question just said pick the correct fraction. That's what ratio means. All I had to pick was the fraction that is my adjacent or my hypotenuse, which ends up being 15 over 25. So that would have been the answer you would have chosen for a question like this. Now notice, for this example, this is the exact same triangle, right? 15, 20, 25, A, B, C. The difference is the trig function is different, as well as the angle is different. So now that I'm looking here at B, my labels would change. So again, this is how you know how to get the correct answers, is label in respect to the angle. In respect to this angle, now 15 is opposite. 25 is still the hypotenuse because that's always the hypotenuse. And this is the adjacent. So for tangent being opposite over adjacent, the answer to this question is 15 over 20. Opposite over adjacent. So again, go back to your test. Look at those questions. You look at the letter. Based on the letter, label your sides. Based on the trig function, pick the correct fraction. Okay, 10 through 12 was regular trig. So this one, you're given an angle, and you need to find a side. So what you needed to do was draw the picture and label your sides. You have to. It's really difficult to do this without. I can't do it without drawing the picture. So I'm going to go through these steps with this example here. So A is 42. A, B is 10. We're trying to solve for A, C. I'm going to call that X. You could leave it as A, C, but in my mind, I like looking at X better because I'm used to that. So that was step 1. Step 2 is label your sides in respect to your given angle, meaning opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. So I'm going to go ahead and label all of my sides. I don't have this one though, but I'm going to go ahead and label it because I know this one's the opposite, right? That's the opposite. This is the hypotenuse, which leaves 10 to be the adjacent. Now, so I don't confuse myself, I'm going to go ahead, and I'd recommend you do this too, erase the side we don't have so you don't think you can use it. We can't. We are going to look at SOHCAHTOA. This is now step 3. And we are going to pick the correct trig function. So adjacent, hypotenuse, that means we need to use cosine, right? Adjacent, hypotenuse. Setting up your trig equation, this may be where you made your mistake. It is always for regular trig. Trig function, angle are married together in a normal regular world. Adjacent over hypotenuse, 10 over x. And then once you have your setup, you cross multiply and solve. So again, this may also have been where you made your mistakes. Cross multiplying this is x times cosine 42 and 10 times 1. Now again, guys, you cannot just assume what's going to happen here, what goes into your calculator. You can only go to your calculator. When x is by itself, and is x by itself here? No. We're going to divide by cosine 42 so that x can be by itself. And then you would go to your calculator and plug that in. I'll go ahead and I'll plug it in here. 10 divided by, cosine 42. So for this question, you should get 13.5-ish, 4 or 5. But if you want to double check that, you can. Go back to your test, see if you can correct those mistakes and see what you did wrong. Again, 10 through 12 is all this type of question, regular trig. 13 to 15 is inverse trig. So these are asked to find an angle, guaranteed inverse trig. So I'm going to go through this example here, going through these steps. So step 1 is always to draw your picture and label it with the info given. BC is 10, AB is 5. We want to find angle A. That's what we're trying to find. So this is why, again, this is guaranteed to be inverse trig. Inverse trig is the only tool we have to find angles. Then we're going to label our sides in respect to the angle we want. So if I want this angle, I'm going to label them. So again, I'm going to do all 3, and then I'm going to erase the one I don't have so I don't get confused. 10 is the opposite. B is the hypotenuse, which I don't have. Therefore, 5 has to be the adjacent. So I don't get confused, I'm going to erase the hypotenuse. I don't want to think I can use that. Looking at SOHCAHTOA is our next step. Well, because we have opposite and adjacent, this is tangent. Now, the nice thing about inverse trig is that once you have your setup, you go immediately to your calculator. So, inverse tangent means tangent -1, right? That's that special button. You don't type the -1 yourself. It's a special button in the calculator. And then, because this is inverse, things are switched. Normally, the angle is here, but because we have inverted things, we switch them. So the fraction's going to go here, which opposite over adjacent had to be 10 over 5. It cannot be 5 over 10. You will get a different answer. And then we just go straight to our calculator. You should get 63.4. So if you want to check that in your calculator, make sure you can get that correct answer. That is what it is. So check those 3 questions. That's all you're doing for all 3. Draw the picture, label opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent, pick the trig function, go from there. Okay, and these last ones, 16 through 18. Oh, we struggled with these still. I know it's tough, guys. I know it's tough. Real quickly. For these questions, dang it. Hello. What's up? Good, I am recording a video, but I'm almost, that's okay. I can edit it in Edpuzzle. I'm almost done. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. I can either pick it up after school or, okay. I haven't eaten lunch yet, so. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I'll be done with my video by the time you get here. Okay, bye. Okay, so with these questions, the hard part was drawing the triangle, because if you got these ones right, if you got the regular trig questions right, and you got the inverse trig questions right, you know how to do it. It's just the picture needs to be correct. So these questions, just a hint, guys, ended up being regular trig or inverse. There are word problems that exist that I could make up that end up being Pythagorean theorem, but for these ones, it just ended up being regular trig or inverse trig. I cannot emphasize enough, guys, I don't know how else to help you out. You have to be careful with your picture. Really focus and imagine what's going on. Double check, does this make sense? And then you just have to understand, if we're finding a side length, that's regular trig. If you're finding the angle, it's inverse trig. And then you can go back and follow the steps of that process. So let's look at this one. A flagpole 18 feet tall casts a shadow 12 feet long at a specific time of a day. So what I want you to start with, pause the video if you need to, because I want you to try this question, because a lot of you guys miss these. So you need to try it on your own and then check. 18 feet tall and the shadow measures 12 feet. Where would those go? Draw the start of your triangle. Okay, so 18 feet tall, the shadow is 12 feet long. This is your shadow, right? Your shadow lies on the ground. Then this is our triangle, right? We connect the lines and that becomes our triangle. We want to find the angle of elevation from the ground up to the sun. So guys, here's where your angle comes from. The ground. Where is the ground? Here. This is the ground. We want the angle up from the ground. So that's what you're trying to find. Stop thinking angle of elevation means top, yeah? So this one ends up being inverse trig. You would follow the process from there. You should be able to do that though. If you struggle with the inverse trig, go back and watch this part of the video. But that is solved from there. So go back to your questions, try and figure out what you did wrong with your picture. It's probably what went wrong.